Okay, we're holding Siman Kuf Dalad. You may be a little bit behind, I'm sure. Kuf Dalad is about Din Achbar Shenimtza B'yayin V'Shechar. What do you do if you find a mouse in wine or in beer? And actually, we will analyze what the din is if a mouse is found in other food items as well. But there's something significant about wine and beer in combination with a mouse. And this is all from the Gemara in Basar that deals with this question. But before we begin with the Siman, maybe just a quick review on some concepts. Birya, Nois and Tamlev Gam amongst them. It's important to keep in mind because we will need it for this Siman, that a birya is something unique. It has various criteria of what makes it a birya, which we don't need to review now. But an important criteria of what cancels it from being a birya is that if it's missing a limb, if it's cut up, it loses its chashibas, right? It's no longer a birya. You still need the roiv, you still need shishim as usual, but you have the additional advantage that you don't no longer have to deal with the problem that it's afilu be'elef lobotel. We have the concept of nois and tamlev gam, which is also interesting, that even if something is not ordinarily bottled, there's not enough of a shear against it, whatever it may be, but it in itself is pogum, or it makes the tafshel pogum as a result of the mixture, nois and tamlev gam halacha is its mutter. And we saw various examples of nois and tamlev gam, even in the situation where you have a pot that we know that was used for treif food, but it hasn't not been used for a while, or at least 24 hours, that the tam, which we're concerned with, the tam, is pogum. And therefore, anybody that cooked food in such a pot of basar b'cholov, a pot that was used for treif, and the tam, of course, is an asur tam, but because the tam by now is pogum, it means that I can have b'di'evid the food. I can eat the food. I still need to take care of the keli. I obviously cannot cook lechatchila, right? But it's important to know that nois and tamlev gam is mutter. And we explained that nois and tamlev gam can come about in various situations. It can come about either because the food that was treif or asur is nisrach, completely rotten, that it's no longer considered something asur, for the various explanations of why that is no longer has the status of being asur. It's nisrach. It was good food to begin with, it no longer is. Spoiled. And then we have a situation where the combination of a particular food item into something else makes it pogum, so it in itself is not pogum, but as a combination with something else, it becomes very distasteful. And the third example is pogum me'atzmoi, which the Ramah seems to be implying could mean something which intrinsically, by itself, is pogum, even before you begin to mix it with something else. It just has a very, very bad taste. And certain insects may fall under that category of pogum me'atzmoi, or things that are mo'us, that we are, discussed it with. So this could make a difference. It could make a difference because even though birya is not botel afilu be'elef, it seems to, the way we understood, at least from the Ramah, not everybody agrees to this way of understanding the Ramah, but one way of understanding that Ramah of pogum me'atzmoi is that if a birya is pogum me'atzmoi, then it loses its status of birya if it's in a taaruvos, in a mixture. Because we all know, we all agree that regardless of what creature we're talking about, you cannot have it, no matter what, right? You cannot eat it if it's not kosher, even if it's pogum, no matter what, unless, of course, it's nisrach. And nisrach, you wouldn't be able to have it either, unless, of course, it's not roy l'achilas kelev. In other words, if you would want to have the isur be'ein, you want to have something which is asur, the real thing, you cannot have it unless it's completely not food. Then it doesn't have it in the food. Then even if it's a birya, if it's a piece of wood, it's a piece of wood. Even so, with medication, we have to be careful and look for alternatives. We don't want to put anything into our mouth. The reason why it's mutter, if there's nothing else, is because we don't prohibit tray food shelo kederech achiloso, shelo kederech hanooso, which means not in the usual way of eating it. So if something has been made bitter through all kinds of flavorings, it's a form of shelo kederech achiloso, into a pill, into a tablet, where it renders it also completely unedible in a sense. Even though we say it's called achsheve, achshev means we give it importance, according to some, that may be, of course, an issue. Achsheve. Achsheve means I give this importance, even though it's no longer edible. I need it. It's important to me. Let's not consider that point. Once something is totally not edible, it's really not osir. Right, and which we shouldn't use if we have alternatives. Yeah. There are other issues when it comes to foods, food items, we talked about. It is.
No, because the gel and caps are not.
Well, you can technically. You could throw away the caplet, the gel caplet, and just swallow the contents, and that's what sometimes is advisable to do. If you don't really need the caplet. Sometimes because of the timing. Yeah. Right. So you have to look for something else. But there are times that we can permit these things because they're totally not edible. Yeah.
I'm curious, why would you prohibit totally non-edible?
No, lechatchila, we don't.
We try to avoid.
We try to avoid that.
Isser.
There's no real isser. There's no real isser. Yeah, there is an isser, an additional isser called balteshaksum, which we discussed briefly about. Even though something may not be usser in itself to eat, it's balteshaksum means it's disgusting, but that's something else completely. All right. So in the last siman, in siman kuf gimel, we spoke about the various situations of nois and tam lefgam. Now we're going into another siman which is related, that somehow also touches on tam lefgam, but adds some additional important pieces of information. Today you're going to learn an incredible chidush that sometimes is lost when learning Hilchos Taaruvos. A very important detail that only comes about through this siman kuf dalet. At first sight, kuf dalet does not appear to be so relevant. It deals with mice. And in some way you may say, oh, it's very relevant.
Well,
yeah.
relevant.
Right. On the other hand, why doesn't he put it together with kuf gimel, where the Mechaber discusses tam lefgam? But you will see there are various additional halachas over here that are really apart from tam lefgam. I think it's a good idea to go over what the Aruch HaShulchan says, what he writes on this siman, because he pretty much gives us an overview of this important detail that I will discuss. And once we go through his introduction, his overview, the whole siman, or kimat the whole siman, is easier to understand. Okay, so let me go over with you his little introduction. He says as follows: it is well known that one of the klalim, the rules of bitul iser, is that bitul is not shayach on something that is nikar, only on something which is not nikar. Okay? Make sense? Right?
Yeah.
Give an example.
I'm going to give you an example. Right? Bitul iser is not shayach only when the iser is not identifiable. Then he adds something very interesting. He says, neither does it apply when the heter is nikar and not the iser. In other words, that the heter and nikar is not mevatel the iser that is not nikar. Now, if you read these words, you say, what is he talking about? Did you hear me well? In other words, that the heter hanikar, the heter that I can recognize, is not mevatel the iser that I cannot recognize.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we had in other instances,
right,
we had kind of we had a symmetry that just like the is can overpower the heter if they're a majority.
Okay.
So the heter can also overpower the iser if the heter is a majority. So at that point we had to.
Yeah, but that's something else. But the words that he says here are a little bit enigmatic, because he says the heter hanikar,
yes,
which I recognize, is not mevatel an isser which is not nikar.
We don't usually think of the isser dissolves into the heter and therefore is batal because you have 60 to look at it, right? In other words, if you have a piece, I assume he talks about nicker with the piece of treif meat and soup.
Okay.
You have to take out the piece. There's no way you can batal that piece of meat.
Right.
You
But
have to take it out.
of course, that's called isser be'ein. But what's interesting here, he says it the way he says it. His wording is a little difficult unless you read on.
Yeah, well, so
One more time.
What are the circumstances? Do we have 60 in the heter against Isser? Obviously not.
No, that's not the issue here.
So we have a minority of heter that is nicker, and we have a majority of
No,
Isser.
that's not the point here. We didn't even get to that. He's giving us.
If you could identify the heter, could not identify, so that it's more likely you would be saying the opposite.
Without his example, you wouldn't really understand what he's talking about, because the first rule he told us is clear. If the Isser is Be'ein, the Halacha or the cloud of Bittul does not apply. The Isser is Be'ein. I can see it. Then he says, and if the heter is Nikar, it's not Mevatel, the Isser that is not Nikar. What do you mean? You just finished saying that if the Isser is Nikar, then it's not Mevatel. But what do you mean the Isser is not Nikar? Then the heter that is Nikar cannot be Mevatel. What are you talking about?
So I understand. So you have to try, if he says that.
No, remember, it's a cloud. We're not talking about a shear here, an amount. He says, he's making a rule. The rule is, the heter hanikar does not mevatel the iso she'eno nikar. So
Rabbi Kin,
yes.
If you're going to make sense of it,
right?
then you have to first understand which case about.
No, there's no case.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You can exclude all those cases where without saying such a principle, the heter will be mevatel the iso. Those cases he can't be talking about. Without such a principle. There are cases where the heter will be the Isser without such a principle.
We know.
So obviously all cases in which you have 60 of the heter against the Isser, if you have an Isser that is not Litchabed or one of the special cases, by every Isser that is misbattled insti, if you have a 60 in the heter, it would be misbattled, so you wouldn't need such a principle.
Of course, but the question is what kind of...
That's the reason that he's talking about a case where this other...
But he's not, right.
Okay, but this one that it isn't.
Yeah.
Piece of meat
absorbs.
That would be the ain heter piece of meat.
Okay.
And an isser that's not nicker would be the chalip that's melted into the piece of meat. Not nicker anymore if the chalip gets into the pure anymore, is it?
Right. Okay. So
I would think that if you have 60, it's the chalip.
You can mevatel it, no?
So it's obviously that's not what
he's not talking about. No. So that's what I'm telling you. When I first read it, if you don't read the whole thing, you know what. So you have to read his example. Okay, I'm quoting you what he says, and I'm sharing with you that it's a little bit difficult to understand, but when we see his example, everything makes sense. So what's the example? He says like this: imagine an Isser that fell into a tafshil. Okay? A tafshil is a dish. You have food. And what do you have in this tafshil? You have liquid. And you have pieces, let's say pieces of meat. And one or more treif. Right? We have an Isser. Now, the heter is nikar. What's pshat? I have a piece of kosher meat that I can recognize. Okay? Somehow I'm able to recognize it. The problem here is that the Isser meat looks like the heter meat. They resemble each other. So it's an Isser which is not nikar. You cannot distinguish between the two. So even though we have shishim keneged the Isser, that piece of Isser is not bottle. Why? The shishim helps me with the plita. With the tam that came out of the Isser. I'm saved. My tafshil is saved because I have shishim keneged the Isser, which means I have shishim keneged the plita, which I can't see. Right? But I still need shishim against the plita. I don't want to ruin my whole tafshil. But that piece of Isser that's there that is not distinguishable, it's not nikar. It's not distinguishable from the heter, is not bottle.
You have to take out all the meat.
I can't have the meat.
You can't have any meat, take it all out.
Exactly. The Isser of Bittul does not apply here because the Isser is not nikar. I cannot, what he meant was therefore, I cannot distinguish it from the heter.
You can't.
I can see it, but it doesn't mean I can see the Isser. What he meant by it's not nicker is that I cannot distinguish it from the heter, and I don't have enough in the heter to be mevatel the isur.
How much is it?
Well, you would need roiv.
So
If you had roiv for sure against it, then of course it's batel beroiv.
So you're
You
saying
still need shishim neged tam. But when I have, let's say, only two pieces, and I don't know which one is the usur one. I don't.
Pieces.
Right, I don't know which one is the
You
isur.
don't have multiple row.
What?
that's not a chiddush.
It is that's not. I didn't say that was a chiddush. I'm giving an introduction now.
Okay.
Right? I'm going through the introduction of the Aruch HaShulchan. He gives us two klalim. The isur's be'ein. That we understood. Take it out. And even if the isur is be'ein, but I don't know which one it is, it's not batel.
I just want to make sure.
Right.
What falls in is isur or
Yeah.
What falls in is isur or what's falling in?
Isur fell into the pot.
And then the rest, the other already is
Heter, right.
So you have one piece of one heter,
Right.
one piece of non-coder
Right.
falls in. You don't have batal baro because you don't have heter.
Right.
Therefore, he said you can't eat the meat.
That's correct,
Fine.
yeah. Yeah. And this, if you don't have a certain amount to be mevatel, it's not going to be mevatel it. Because I know one of them is asur, and I just don't, they all look alike. Okay? So this is all understood. We understand this, but it's important that he review this with us because of what he's going to tell us that is a chidush in this siman. He goes on to explain, therefore, we understand why yavesh is not botel in lach, and lach is not botel in yavesh. It sounds different and strange, but it's not. What is he saying? Simple. Yavesh and lach, we can see them. They're very different. Right? One is yavesh and one is lach. The yavesh is not botel in the lach. The lach has no ability to be mevatel the yavesh. They're two so distinguishable. I shouldn't say this. What's the better word for the two are so different and identifiable that they're not mevatel. It's like the isur's be'ein. They don't disappear. Lach and yavesh are very opposites. Right? It's simple. Just we never heard this in this way. In this as
solid.
liquids and solids. Yeah, a soup will not be mevatel a treif hot dog. Neither will the treif hot dog be mevatel the liquid, because their two are very different. Bittul does not apply here.
You know, hot dog.
What is that?
If you had a hot dog, of 60 times, you wouldn't batal it?
No. Even if you have 1,000
Because
times.
the time, it's all because liquid.
You have a hot dog in there. Let me ask you a question. You have a big pot. You have 1,000 times liquid more than the hot dog.
Liquid, I know doesn't.
Will the liquid be mevatel the hot dog?
I know the liquid can't.
No.
No.
The hot dog is still
I'm
there.
looking the other way. I thought
Yeah.
it was time because.
No. We're not talking about tam. Tam is bottle b'shishim. Why is the tam bottle b'shishim? Because we don't see it.
But if you have
Yeah.
a hot dog,
Yes. Yeah.
so you have a hot dog that's the liquid. The tom from the hot dog goes in and will vital the liquid
The tam goes into,
into the liquid from the hot dog. You know
and it
what-
will be diluted.
Let's say it's
You're right.
Basar.
Yeah,
Let's
but
say
we're
it's Basar.
not. But we're not talking about tam right now. I'm just talking about, will a solid cancel a liquid or a liquid cancel a solid? No.
Would not cook. You say not just in general.
In
not-
general.
Unless the solid absorbs the whole quantity.
Well, yeah, maybe, yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
kind of-
So you see, I'm just quoting the words of the Aruch HaShulchan. He's telling us some basic ideas that we know of. Just he's presenting it in such a way that we didn't even think of we didn't think like that. But that's what bittul. That's the way bittul works. Bittul, if it's somehow, if the isur is there, it's not going to go. It's not going to disappear. Bittul won't apply to it. I can't differentiate it from the heter, lach and yovesh. It's pretty much there. Bittul applies when the isur is completely disguised and we don't know. We have no idea which one it is.
Applies.
Bittul applies when it's totally not possible for us to know what it is, right? And of course you have a shear against it, right?
Mean the shape and solid.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying
Right.
They're all meat, so I think you're saying. But you could have one that's identified as the trade.
Obviously, it's not bottle.
So then, what?
It's not bottle. It has to be that I cannot see it. I cannot know it. Now, so what he adds over here, that if I have two, it's also not bottle, because it's as though I can recognize it. Just because I have, I don't have enough to cancel it out. One of them is asur and one of them is mutter. The liquid, I have shishim keneged, so the liquid is going to be safe, but the yovesh or the isur will not be bottle, because it is as though I can identify it. Once I have a certain shear against that piece, then it is as though, we've explained, as though it doesn't exist. It has been transformed. But as long as I don't have that shear, I don't know which one it is. It's not bottle. These are very simple rules, but they are important for us to be able to understand what he's going to say soon.
Milk.
Yeah.
And it's all cold. They don't
Right.
interact, so you can
Right,
rinse
exactly.
off the milk off the
Right,
pieces,
exactly.
and that's it.
Right. Therefore, based on these rules, if you have an insect that falls into liquid, a stew, and it's been minced to very, very small pieces, and there's no way to filter it out. You follow me? It's been minced into very small pieces, and there's no way to filter them out. It would not be bottle, afilu be'elef. The isur is there. The isur is there. It's present. I just cannot take it out. I have no way of filtering it out. But there's nothing to be mevatalet. It's lach and yovish. I have liquid stew. I have an insect that was completely minced into the spot, crushed, liquefied, whatever you want to say. Liquefied may be a little bit different.
Does
Yeah.
it make a difference when it's still identifiable?
Yes.
It's not to be identifiable.
In other words, there's something there.
See them?
Barely.
Well,
But I can see something. I can detect something. It's hard to remove them. They're so small.
because we got
The whole
beyond-
isser is there.
Because we got beyond that to see it at all.
Right, of course.
Then it would.
Obviously, then it's completely gone. Because then, that's why I said with liquefy, it's almost a separate halacha. Right. So you understand where he's headed? This is where he's headed, therefore. He's preparing us that if you have a sheretz that is completely minced up, cut up into pieces, and it's in the stew, and there's no way for you to remove it, it's going to be usher.
Well, with Biria, we saw that said in Biria, they're cut up or crushed in a way that they lose their form. They are
That's
no
correct.
longer cheshuv. Is that right?
Well, you always need at least 60. Sure.
So what,
Or a roy,
then, then you can eat the you're saying, if you have pieces of the bug that are cut up,
That's the next detail that he says.
and were done intentionally,
Right.
then, yeah, I thought.
Right. That's where we're headed
If you would
now.
have 60 against it.
Yeah, that's where we're-
if you
that's-
have 60 against it.
That's when you cannot detect it. That's the next detail. As opposed to the liquid example that I gave you, if you have a sheretz that fell into a tafshil that is ove, thick, meat, potatoes, beans, and vegetables, and it's completely squashed, right? And you cannot recognize it, then you have the din of bittul, just like you have yovish beyovish and lach belach. This interesting detail over here that he's adding that is important for this siman is that if you don't have that kind of a situation, you have a yovish in a lach, you have a sheretz that's cut up into small little pieces, but you have a problem filtering it out. So in some ways, it is recognizable. I just can't get it out.
So what's it you're saying the difference?
In your example, nothing is recognizable whatsoever. The beer is completely squashed, torn apart, right? Mixed into vegetables and meat and all kinds of things. I can't see it.
You can't
It's bottle. It's bottle. You're right, it is bottle, if there's enough of a shishim, right? I can't see it. Here, in some ways, I can see it. I just cannot filter it out.
It's discernible.
It's somehow discernible. That's a good word.
So in that case, if you even just
It's
if
not bottle.
pieces
It's not bottle. That's called. I can see it. It's the isur is ba'ain. Bitul has not happened over here.
even if you have 60.
Yes,
So
even
we're talking
if you
now-
have 1,000.
We were talking now
Thousand?
something yavish.
Yeah, because I can. It's, like Ilan said, it's discernible.
But it's not a berry anymore. This is the
It's
berry
not-
is
nothing to do
only-
with
And nothing to do with the birya. It's discernible. Didn't we just say that something that is discernible
But
is
why
not
1,000?
bottle?
Why are you saying 1,000 then?
Because if somehow it's still discernible, I can still see the bugs in there.
Now,
Really?
it's quite.
Well, wait, but we're talking about
It's
a yavish
clear.
and a lach. We're talking
Right.
yavish and lach.
Sure.
In other words, I have some kind of liquid,
Right.
and there's one thing in there that's not liquid, and
Right.
that's this bug.
Right.
That's the only thing that's not liquid. If there were other pieces
Right.
of whatever
Right.
solids in there, then it would misbutton against those other pieces of solids
Right.
because then I can't distinguish between the bug and other solids.
Right.
But here, whatever is solid is bug,
Right.
and whatever is liquid is not bug. So it's discernible. It's a whole different.
Exactly. Right.
Even if it's squashed, because it's not a question of beer.
Right. But you're going to see that this little detail, which we're going to be learning now, is not so simple. Not everybody exactly agrees on that. But it follows the rule that the Aruch HaShulchan explains, that apparently since the Isser is discernible, it's not bottle. But we're going to see who says what. As opposed to if it's in Yavish, in a tafshil, when it's not discernible, it's no longer a birya, it's smashed, it's cut up, it's bottled. Now, you will find, before we begin the Siman, that there is several poskim that hold that there is a difference when it comes to Isurim between a special group called Shmoyne Shratzim.
A good group.
What?
It doesn't sound like a good group.
No,
I mean,
no,
a
it's
little bit
not.
of knowledge of the relationship.
Yeah,
It doesn't
these
sound
8 that have Tuma to them, that the Torah lists that have Tuma to them, only 8 that have Tuma. And these Shratzim even are metame beke'adosha. There's Tuma to them beke'adosha. There was the size of Adas in Farsi. Lentils. Yeah,
What's that mean?
I was just saying because in Farsi it's also. Huh?
For what?
Lentils. Yeah. Okay, so in the same way, since they have Tuma in that, there is Isur Malchus to have even the size of an adosha of these sherets. Most shiurim we've learned is bekazais. Here, it's bekadosha for Malchus. You need an adosha, size of an adosha of this insect, Malchus. Now, so some want to explain this way, that this group of 8, since you get Malchus on eating an kadosha, since there's tuba bekadosha, therefore if they get mixed into a tafshil or into anything, they will not be bottle, afilu be'elef, like a birya. Okay? Since there's Malchus and even an adosha, okay? And because there's also tuma and adosha, because of that, even a piece, like an adosha, in a mixture, is not bottle afilu be'elef. Masha ein kain, other isurim. Other isurim, we know that's not, even if you, according to them, even if you can discern them a little bit, but it's so fine that you cannot eliminate them, they're bottle. So these poskim hold that even if something is a little bit discernible, here, this is the big chiluk over here, even if something is a little bit discernible, but it's not from the shrotzim that are listed, that even an adosha is not bottle be'elef, like a birya. Anything else, any other isurim would be bottle if it's totally not possible for me to remove. It's so minute. Even though I know something is there. That's not called an isur be'ein. That's not called something which is not bottle. It's pretty much bottle. No, I can't remove it. I can't filter it out. Okay? I have the shear, of course, against it, to be mevatel it. Okay? But it does not present a problem, the fact that it's discernible a little bit.
So in other words, a lentil-sized mouse.
We haven't gotten to mice yet. But anyway, right, all right.
It was one of the
Right, the shrotzim, yeah.
So a lentil-sized piece of a mouse would not be misbuttled in a keg of water or whatever, even though I can't maybe see because there's a lot of water. It wouldn't be misbuttled because it's one of these shmonesh ratzim.
Right.
But a lentil-sized piece of meat of a different sherets that's not one of the 8 would be misbuttled.
Would be misbuttled, right. If there was no way for me to be mevarer
to remove it.
According
to this opinion.
The
first opinion quoted, even in that case it wouldn't
That's
have been
called a
misbuttled
form of isur be'ein.
Because
It's a form of nicker, exactly. This is the big chiddush over here. But we will see a little bit more. So I'm giving you right now the overview of the way the Aruch HaShulchan presents it, and then we will see the words inside. Now, what's difficult about this svara that holds that a piece of birya the size of the adosha, or I should say a sheretz the size of an adosha, should not be bottled because it's like a birya, just because it's one of the shmona shrotzim. The Taz has a problem with this, and I think others too. It says we've learned in Hilchas birya that if birya is cut up, it's no longer a birya. So he has a problem with the explanation given to attribute this lack of bittul because it's like a birya. In other words, the fact, why isn't it not bottle? Because it's like a birya that's not bottle of filbera. So the Shach has another way of explaining this.
So that was the Taz.
That was the Taz has a problem with all this, and he doesn't learn that.
Oh.
The Taz totally disagrees with this group, he rejects totally the learning Pshat. Everybody's trying to learn Rashi here, okay? What Rashi was explaining the Gemara, and I didn't have the time to go into the whole Gemara now, the whole Sugya. But it really, what does it come from? Where do we get this machlok? It's from trying to understand how Rashi was explaining a Gemara that speaks about minced mice. Exactly. In other words, that there was a problem there. So Rashi seems to be saying, because over there it was minced. So what? So he mentions words about shrotzim, adosha, and so forth. So it appears to be an opinion that was formulated as a result of understanding that Rashi is saying that the group of Shmona Shrotzim is unique. There's a special din about them. In Hilchos Taaruvos, in Isurim, that they act like a birya. But the Taz says, where did we learn that from? We've at length explained that when it comes to the Isur of birya, which is the Rabbanan, it falls apart. It loses its status once it's cut up. We never saw an exception to that. So how are you introducing that over here? So the Taz does not learn Pshat in the Mechaber. In other words, Mechaber is going to tell us that Isurim that are minute, that cannot be filtered out, are Nikar, and therefore it's Asr, right? Mechaber is going to basically tell us that. In different words, that is the Psak, that is the Halacha, that it's Nikar. And here they're going to say, no. The reason why we will say something is not bottle, it's not because you can't filter it out, it's because it's Shmona Shrotzim. Shmona Shrotzim, if there's a small piece, even like an adosha, that's why it's not bottle, because it's like a birya. In other words, it continues to be a birya. So it's midin birya. Whereas the Shach says, we will see later, the Shach seems to be saying it has nothing to do with birya, and Achinami, it would be bottle, but it's a gzera d'Rabbanan.
Does the Taz say so? No?
Yeah, the Taz therefore does not hold like this poiskim who hold Pshat, that when you have minced mice, the reason why it's not bottle, it's not because the Isser is Nikar, it's only because it's Shmoyne Shrotzim. And Shmoyne Shrotzim, even if you have small pieces of the sheretz, it still continues to act or behave like a birya. The Taz says, no, we don't learn that. Then why are you going to tell me that minced mice that is still discernible it's still also is not bottle? Not because of Shmoyne Shrotzim. Because if something is discernible, I have a problem filtering it, it's a form of Isser Nikar. It's Be'ain. The rules of Bittul do not apply to it. And therefore, here comes the punchline. The punchline is that this great chidush of discernible Isser, I like your word, which means I can't filter it, applies to all Isurim across the board, not just Shrotzim.
Taz.
Yeah, that's the way the Taz learns. It's a very long, nice Taz over here in Kuf Dalet that explains this idea. Therefore, the Mechaber's din, or this halacha, would therefore apply to all Isurim. This is not a special din in Hilchos Shrotzim, which is interesting because we really didn't cover that. An Isser that is somewhat discernible, but you can't filter out. We spoke about filtering out, of course, that you need to filter out, you have to try your best to remove it. But here it's brought into a different perspective, that were it to be Shrotzim, it's the sheretz that is a problem. It's not the Isser that's discernible. So the Taz has a problem with learning it this way. Okay, so this is the basic chiluk, the differences of opinion when it comes to a sheretz that has been minced up into pieces. Now that we have this brief introduction, we can begin with the Mechaber's words. Din achba shenimtza b'yayin v'shecha. Let me tell you a little bit about the Gemara. The Gemara is a very interesting Gemara. It talks about mice falling into various liquids. mashkim. And there's various fakas in the Gemara. The Gemara is not clear, does not reach a clear conclusion because there's a lack of understanding as to why certain things were made usher by one Amoira and not by someone else. In other words, the Gemara has some issues, some questions as to why this rabbi forbid this mouse falling in, and this other rabbi did not forbid. After all, we hold nois and tam nifgam. In other words, what could it be? So the Gemara has a whole discussion as to what are the problems. Is there or is no problem when a sheretz falls into beer, as an example? Okay? So I'm just going to go over the main ideas without going into the whole sugya. The main question, therefore, in the Gemara is we want to figure out right now, is a mouse any different than other things about giving a tam nefgam if it falls into a mashke? We need to resolve that. Is it nois and tam neshvach or lefgam? Because by now we know that nois and tam nefgam is mutter. So I'm preparing a tremendous large amount of beer. And, unfortunately, somehow the mouse got in. And it's dead, of course. Right? And I'm not going to, of course, be mevatel the mouse. I'm going to throw out the mouse. So we're concerned about the tam right now. We're also going to be concerned about pieces of mice, maybe later on, but right now the Gemara discusses tam, because we're talking about tam lifgam. So the Gemara wants to know, is a mouse going to be a problem? Just like we know treif meat is a problem. But we've just learned that some things that are treif, if they're nois and tam lifgam, they're going to be okay, right? So that's how this Gemara addresses this question. What are you going to say about a mouse? And the two liquids that are the big questions for now are sheikhar and chometz, beer and vinegar. As Tosfos explains, the reason why there was a suffix with these two is because it could be that an achbar, a mouse, somehow through the chemical processes of the way beer is made or vinegar is made, it actually does something to enhance the acidity. Something like that's what pretty much Tosfos says. In other words, there's a doubt here because maybe it actually does something good, beneficial, as opposed to giving it a totally bad taste. All right. Anyway, so there was a suffix. And what's the halacha? We're machmir. In sheikhar and chometz only. We're machmir. That what? That it's not nois and tam nefgam. So the Gemara says that, of course, when it comes to oil, wine, and honey, they're going to be poigim. As we've learned before, that meat and honey don't mix well. There's certain things that don't mix well. So the suffix in the Gemara was sheikhar and chometz, but not so much yain, shemen, and vash. These, an achbar would be poigim. Then the Gemara says, but wait a minute. There's an achbar that is a delicacy on Shulchan Aruch. Have you ever heard of a roasted possum?
They used to eat it, I think.
In the South, there are certain rodents, there are delicacies in certain countries. So the Gemara says, you know what? There is a delicacy called there's a delicacy that is a mouse. So the Gemara says that mouse that you're saying is a delicacy is a different kind of mouse. It's called not achbaro de moso, not your mice in the city, achbaro de dabro, the field mouse, field mice. Now that's the literal translation. Does it actually mean a field mouse versus a regular mouse? Or does it mean a different kind of mole or a vole or there's all kinds of little creatures that look like mice that are in the field. They wanted to say it's a squirrel. I don't think so. Why say squirrel? Yeah, of course, there's all kinds of rodents that are eaten. It's not your ordinary mouse. Obviously, there's a achbaro, the dabro, obviously is something which is a delicacy in some areas. And therefore, their suffix, even, in other words, Gemara says, well, wait a minute, you see, if it's a delicacy, it's not pogum. So that's where the question began. The question begins with achbaro de dabro, because that's where there is more of a question. So the Rashba seems to be saying, we're going to be machmer because it's ola shulchan shemelachim, it's not so mos. And because it's not mos, it's not poigim. Everybody else who's makel on this kind of a mouse, who's lenient on this kind of mouse, is basically going to say, it's not the achbar itself that causes the pgima, it's the taste, the flavor. So what difference does it make what kind of a mouse it is? Any mouse, the flavor of the mouse will be pgima. So there's a different way of looking at the mouse. What actually causes the pgima? Is it because it's mouse, or is it the flavor is no good? Either way, that's a machlokes in Rishonim. Are we going to be lenient on achbara, on all achbarim, that they are poigem, the tafshil? Or are we going to say achbara the dabra, which is oile al shulchan shel melochim, which is a delicacy, therefore it's not poigem if it falls into the beer, especially beer and chometz. This is where the suffix was more than anything else. As I said before, Tosfos explains that somehow these two liquids, beer and vinegar, presented a question, especially with achbar the dabra. Akhbar, yeah, that's from the Arabic word, right? Yeah.
Actually, do they beers and things?
No, they didn't. No, they did not. We're talking about it fell in. You found it. What do you do right now? Sure. No, they didn't do it. Yeah. What? No, it makes no difference. Right now, we have to contend with the problem. Do I need shishim keneged the tam, the plita? That's all. Or we've just finished learning the halachas of tam lefgam. Is this going to be a tam lefgam or not? So it's a little bit of a question in the metzias, in the actual reality. What do we do now? So the mechaber says, maybe let's read the mechaber inside. Achbaro de dabro, if it's a field mouse or something similar to it, that is a delicacy. Noisim tam l'shvachu. He holds mechaber like the Rashba, that it does give a tam l'shvach. It's okay. Share oile al shulchan shel melochim. It's a delicacy. Aval achbaro de mosa mesapken lo. We only have a doubt regarding regular mice. Where is the doubt? We have a doubt, we have a suffix if a regular mouse is poigem, beer and vinegar. Or it's not poigem, we don't know. Therefore, if a mouse falls into beer or vinegar and they're cold, and he removed it intact, if it was not in the liquid for 24 hours or more, mutar. With other mice, it's okay. It's pogum. But what is this about 24 hours? Because we have a doubt, okay, we have a doubt if it's pogum or not, we're going to be machmir if it was kavush. And kavush is a concept that we'll learn in the next siman, kuf hei. There are various forms of heat that can be generated for bishul. I call it heat. One is Melicha. We'll learn in Hilchos Melicha. The salt has a tremendous koach. One is fire. One is kavush. Kavush means you put a pickle, or cucumber actually, into brine, and after a while it will absorb the brine, the salts, the spices, and so will the spices absorb the flavor of the cucumber. It works both ways. In kavush you have poilet and boileya. You've heard of kavush, right? Yeah. In kavush, in most of you learned it also. Kavush has the koyach of being boileya and poilet.
Big difference whether the sharer because of the liquid because he ingested it or died for some other.
No, some say that even if it's alive, it could be there's a plita. The more so if it died and was there for a while. We definitely are concerned, at least, the Mechaber says it's a suffix by other mice. It could be it's poigem. So therefore, if it was not there over 24 hours, it's not a problem. But if it was there for 24 hours, then it's a problem. Otherwise, it's mutter. Avalim hoyoroteach, if it was hot, or filot soinen, but it was cold, but it was there 24 hours or more, whether you removed it intact, whether it was cut up into small pieces, and he can filter it out, that nothing will remain there. Even if it was completely dissolved, it became all liquid, nothing was there left. You still need 60. Okay? That's so far so good. I mean, after all, even though you removed it, even though all the pieces are gone, it was kavush, it was roiseach, you need shishim keneged the tam But here comes the punchline. In nechtach lechatichos dakos, which we said with the taz, if it was cut up into small pieces, you cannot filter it out. Let's say the beer or the vinegar got all mixed in with a very thick stew. Hakol osur ve'in sham bittul. There's no bittul. Why? What's this different? Here, the Mechaber adds the very interesting words. The chayshinan were concerned shemo yifko b'mamosho shel isur velo yargish. You eventually may come to touch, to detect the isur, and not even realizing. So here the Mechaber says, you know what the problem is when something cannot be filtered out, but it's nicker? It's not shmoine shrotzim, that is not bottle. The reason why something is not bottle, which applies to any isur, is that you may come to actually eat it. Interesting. We never saw this halacha before. Usually we're not concerned about that when you have real bittul. But here, it says, Chayshinon shema yifga b'mamosho shel isur v'lo yargish.
Maybe because it's this.
Maybe because what?
Because it's distinct.
It's distinct.
So since it's not misbottled, so now then it's
exactly. Very good. Yes, that's what it is. It's discernible, distinct, in a sense. I just have a problem removing it. So therefore I may come to eat it. But look at the Ramah. The Ramah says no. Dafka, this halacha of minced mice, is dafka b'sheretz yesh lochush in nisha sham shelo yuchal leotzio. But b'shar isurim en lochush. In all other isurim, you don't have to be concerned. It's bottle b'roy, bottle b'shishim. We don't have this problem in shar isurim. He said. Why should we? He actually holds just because something is discernible, but I can't remove it. No, it's still bottle. He holds it would still be bottle. Bottle is bottle. Even I can't remove it. It's bottle. It's gone.
So I'm not talking about the.
So the Ramah says this halacha over here that the Mechaber is bringing would only apply to this case of achbar or shmoine shrotzim.
When he says sheretz, it means shmoine shrotzim.
Yeah, so
there are others.
Right. So the Ramah says this halacha that the Mechaber mentions that minced mice that cannot be filtered out will therefore not be bottle because you might come to the isur. Ramah says this only applies to shmoine shrotzim. When Mechaber doesn't agree. The Mechaber seems to be saying it applies to all isurim. This halacha, this chidush, that an isur that cannot be filtered out is considered on par with an isur be'ein, isur nikar. Big chidush here. A very important difference between two shittas. And what do you do with something that is completely minced? Well, if it's shrotzim, we know that even the Ramah is machbid, right? Is machmer, right? But the problem is, wait a minute, what about the Taz? The Taz was only talking about the main halacha, the main rule of that a birya is no longer a birya. You still need shishim. If the isur is nikar, the isur is nikar. You can't remove it. That's your problem. It's a form of isur nikar, so you need shishim. But we don't have a birya. Okay, fine. So it's not a birya. But according to the Ramah, it's a form of birya here that it's not botel afilu be'elef. By shmoine shrotzim, that is. Everywhere else he has no problem with it. So it's incredible. In other words, with another sheretz, with another isur, if it's completely minced up, right? The only problem would be when you have a kazayis b'chdei achilas pras. That would be the only time there would be maybe a problem.
So the law would allow you to drink that tequila?
Well, not just the Ramah. If you filter it out completely...
It dissolves in the tequila. It dies in.
I actually have seen it. I haven't seen it dissolved.
I've only heard about it.
No, I've seen it.
See the worm inside.
You see the worm inside. It's not dissolved. That's the whole idea.
It's just as based on
the whole idea is that you serve it with the.
Oh, okay. I thought parts of it is dissolved.
No.
You actually see it. It's more disgusting.
It's all the way at the bottom. Yeah.
It's more disgusting than you thought. You actually see it.
Okay.
By the way, you know why they put a worm? That's the worm that lives on that cactus.
I only heard about this.
Yeah, sure. It's a special tequila. Yeah.
So why did they put the worm that lives on the cactus?
Well, that's part of the whole thing. It's a I don't know, a way of selling something unique. I don't know.
Okay. That they sell it, I understand. Why do people buy it?
You buy it for the warmth, not for the tequila. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the big distinction that I wanted to share with you between the Mechaber, the Ramah, the various poskim about discernible Isser versus not discernible. The halachas of Bittul apply or do not apply. The problem is that does this apply to only Shrotzim, or does it apply across the board? Ramah says it's only by the Shrotzim that we say, which is interesting. And of course, the Tas says, well, you can't even say that it applies by Shrotzim, because as far as we're concerned, Biria is cut up into pieces. It's not a Biria. So the Shach, we'll see. The Shach says it has nothing to do with Biria. The Shach is pretty much in agreement here. Let me see if I found. Yeah, they say that it really. Let me see if I have it here. What is it? What is it? The Torah lists them. Yeah. Right. Yeah, so the Shach does bring down that din shereth is a special din, but it's not really because of birya. Because birya is cut up, it's not a birya. So that it would be bottle if you cannot filter it. But Chazal were goizer that in those situations where you may come to eat or to have the mamashos of the Isser. So if there was a filu bekadosho, you're going to be nichshel in the Isser Gomer. So that's only by sheretz, he said, but not by other Isurim. For example, by Shar Yisum, they did not make a gzera. You may come to eat a chatzi shir, even though chatzi shir is also min Torah. We don't see that gzera. Oh, be careful not to eat it because you may be nichshel in a chatzi shir. But by a sheretz, the Shach seems to be going along with that camp that they were goizer. Not because of birya necessarily, but because you may come to eat it. A sheretz which is also bekadosho. Okay, so we have various poskim here, Rishonim, Achronim, on how to deal with the achbar and mice, what kind of mice. Right? The main point to remember here is that the suffix of the Gemara was by shecher and chometz only, whereas by other mashkim, for the most part, they would be poigem. We'll see that there's a marshal that says a little bit different. All right, maybe we'll just go into. Before we go into the next seif, I have an interesting analysis here of a mechaber, which I want to share with you. You may come across it in your other shiurim. The mechaber here gave us an example of kavush, right? Kavush means that something was immersed in a liquid for some time. And that causes the liquid and the solids to absorb from each other. All right. Even if it's water, right? Is there a difference between if it's water and if it's other liquids? How about Coca-Cola? He doesn't talk about cola, but he does talk about chometz. And he says that if it was in chometz, nofal l'shoicher or lechometz b'tzoinen, it was cold, not a problem. Unless it was there for 24 hours. What is he telling us? That chometz here, 24 hours of chometz, vinegar, is a problem. In Siman Kuf Hey, the next Siman, the Mechaber seems to be contradicting himself. Or he says something completely opposite to what when he discusses the halacha of kavush, he says that how much do you need for kavush in chometz? Kedei sheyartiach, when yitno ala or v'yartiach. As long as the amount it takes for it to be put on the fire and to cook, to boil. Which is what the requirement is for tzir. Brine. So how come here he says you need 24 hours, and there he says you need even less than that? In other words, powerful liquids can make kavush almost instantly. Water, I understand. So how come here he says chometz is 24 hours, and there he doesn't? It really is a big tzarechiyun. I mean, it's hard to figure this one out because the mechaber is very clear. There's three answers that are given for it. So I just want to share with you, and with this we'll finish for today. One svara is, the Magen Avram has a svara that there's two kinds of chometz. One is a strong chometz and one is a lighter form of chometz. The chometz that we're talking about over here is a chometz made from wine or from beer or whatever. A lighter chometz, you would need 24 hours. A more powerful chometz could be that it would be kavush in less amount of time. That's the Magen Avram's answer. The Pri Megadim and others seem to be saying like this. The reason why the Mechaber was lenient here by Achbar, in Kuf Hey he discusses ordinary, typical Isurim, and the din of regular kavush with Isurim. Here he's talking about Achbar, remember. So he says like this, we have two sveikas. We have a suffix whether kavush bechoimetz, how much you need for it to be kavush. You need a lot or you need less. And you have another suffix, whether an achbar is poigim b'sheicher and choimetz or not. Right? Whether an achbar does make it pogum. So you have a sfeik of sorts. You understand? So since here we have a sfeik, therefore he said you would need 24 hours. The Mechaber here was lenient with choimetz, chovush and choimetz. Whereas in Kuf Hey, he tells us the real din of chovush. I looked it up a little bit more.
Wait a minute, if it's a sfeik,
No, we know kavush is kavush. Kavush is a din midoraisa, by the way. Kavush is kavush. The question only is how much time will it take for it to become kavush. So here the Mechaber may have been lenient by choimetz. Why? Because there's a sfeik of sorts. How much is it? How much will it take for choimetz? Does it take that much? And does the achbar really maybe the achbar is poigim the sheikha and the choimetz? After all.
The homeland, right?
That's the real choimetz, yeah. But this one maybe, Magen Avraham says that maybe it's a lighter form of choimetz that's made from wine. So Magen Avraham seems to be saying there's different kinds of choimetz. Okay, but the Mechaber doesn't distinguish that. So it's the second, the Pri Megadim makes some sense, and some learn like the Pri Megadim. There's various poskim achronim, I think, that learn like the Pri Megadim. That basically say, here he's more lenient because there's the additional suffix of whether achbor is poigim, the sheikher or the choimetz. That's all. But if you look in the tour, at the very, very bottom, there is Chidush Agodos, I think it is, that brings down over there that they asked the Bes Yosef this, and he wrote back a tshuva that he never meant to compare choimetz to tzir in Siman Kuf Hey for all purposes. He only meant to compare there that if it's less than 24 hours, it's like tzir that you need to take off a klipa. In other words, if it was there for a few minutes, in the choimetz or the tzir, you would need to remove a klipa. That's how strong it is. He only meant to compare it to tzir, that you would have to remove a klipa if it was less than the 18 minutes or whatever. He never meant to compare it exactly to tzir. But the halacha would be that you need 24 hours for regular choimetz. Then why put it together with tzir? It's a little bit of a doichak. But that's what the tshuva appears to be. That's what he seems to be saying. So it could be that it was worded a little bit differently, but that's what, if you read the Beis Yosef actually, he seems to be implying that in Siman Kuf Daled. That choimetz, that if it's not 24 hours, it would not be a problem. And if anything, it would be maybe a kedei klipa or something like that. In other words, we see that he's not saying that it's exactly like tzir. But anyway, that really is for us to discuss when we get to Siman Kuf Hey. I just wanted to present it to you, that in case you come across, well, wait a minute, the Mechaber says here, Meisla Eisen over there, if you somehow you know it in advance, you should know that it's a question that is mentioned by the Shach and by others, and there's various explanations for it. But Mr. Hashem will continue through the rest of this.